Hey everybody, Will Hamilton here, and in this video I'm going to talk about how variety is overrated. Now, last night I released a video called Power is Overrated, and in that video I talked about a 1-2 punch strategy you can use when you're serving. And if we've got you down here and your opponent up here, these are sort of weird player icons I drew. This actually it doesn't really look like a tennis racket, that looks maybe like a wizard staff. So you're Gandalf, and then we've got your opponent up here. But you're serving out wide to your opponent, pulling your opponent off the court, and any mediocre return somewhere in the middle of the court, you just put into the open court. And so that 1-2 strategy, it allows you, if you just have a consistent placement over here, not too much power, it actually allows you to exert constant pressure on your opponent, be in the driver's seat on most of your service points. So that video got a ton of feedback, and I've been reading those comments, and there were a number of questions that y'all asked. So I wrote a couple of them down right here. So we're going to go over some of the comments, and I'm going to address sort of the biggest questions that came out of that video. And I've got this flow chart up here because the main question had to do with variety. And people were saying, you know, don't forget to have some variety in your first serve. Otherwise, your opponent's going to get grooved and is going to start taking big cuts and is going to hurt you. So let's figure out when to use this supposed variety versus just kind of hammering away at the same strategy. So we've got a strategy initially, and we're going to, this is the 1-2 punch, we'll say, for this 1-2 punch right here that we're using. And we're assuming initial success. Obviously, you don't want to stick with a strategy if it's not working. But that's different than variety. This is just a pure, you'd make a strategic adjustment in that case. That's different from variety. So you've got the 1-2 punch and it's working. Now, your opponent, maybe he figures out what your strategy is. So then the question becomes, does he come up with the goods? In other words, can he adjust to your strategy and counteract it somehow? So if the answer is no, then you just are in a rinse and repeat cycle right here. And I think it's really important to understand how often you get the rinse and repeat cycle. We'll put in rinse and repeat because this rinse and repeat, because this happens really, really frequently. And not just at the rec level, but at the pro level. Look at a guy like Rafael Nadal versus literally every single right-handed player. Every single ball, if Rafa's down here, pretty much goes to the backhand, goes cross-court forehand to the backhand for a righty, because that's just a winning proposition for Rafa. Federer knows exactly where Rafa's serves are going and Rafa's forehands are going, and just most ground strokes. They're going to Fed's backhand. Does that matter? No. So there's an example of where, you don't necessarily need variety if the strategy you're using is working. So that would be a rinse and repeat situation right there. Well, let's say your opponent comes up with the goods. He does something to neutralize your initial strategy, in this case the 1-2 punch. So yes, can I adjust? So what would that mean? Somebody in the comments said, well, what happens if my opponent starts to either slice or lob these returns? So opponent's over here, and then slice or lob cross court. We'll go kind of like ... cross court to signify a ball that takes a long time to get back to your end of the court, because in that time, opponent can recover back to the middle of the court. This no longer becomes the open court. Well, can I adjust? In this instance, yes, you can. In this case, if you get a floaty ball coming back cross court, you would close. So maybe you would serve and volley a couple times, and you would take those balls out of the air, maybe somewhere here, and you could just put them into the open court. And you're not going to have to do too much in that instance. A slice, that's not going to have too much pace on it. You can just, I wouldn't say carefully put it over there, but it's not going to be the most difficult ball to handle. Certainly a lob is not going to be very difficult to handle. Maybe you'd be hitting an overhead. So first of all, the adjustment, the initial come up with the goods by your opponent, floaty ball cross court, works against your 1-2 punch if you just stay back and wait for the ball to get to you. But can you adjust? Yes, you can. You start to close. 1-2 punch, slightly modified. Number 2, the second punch is a slight modification, but it works again. So now you're back in this modified rinse and repeat. Okay, so we've got that. Let's say your opponent, or excuse me, let's say, can I adjust? No. So what would that look like? That would be where your opponent starts to hit some real good returns. And I've sort of destroyed the tennis court, but that basically means here, in this area, down the line like that. This is very unlikely, by the way. Really good players might be able to pull this off, but that's a tough shot to pull off consistently. Or somewhere in this area of the court, well struck, where you can't serve and volley. Just a well-hit return here. Well, that is a situation where you can't really adjust too well in this situation, where you can't, apply constant pressure. This would be a good neutralizing return. But guess what? If it is a neutralizing return, then you're just in a neutral rally, which isn't the end of the world. But can you adjust? No. Maybe that's when you throw in some variety. So, and this would be maybe where you go down the line, so your opponent's not looking for the out wide all the time. So you throw a couple more in down the line, and then the out wide becomes effective again. And I'm not trying to say that you just serve everything out wide. Obviously, you want to have you want to mix it up regardless. But I think people are a little too enamored sometimes with variety or disguise. I have to use disguise. No, you don't. Rafael Nadal doesn't use disguise. I mean, he's very obvious what his strategy is going to be. He just executes really well. I mean, that's really the key, execution. So to round out this video, let's take a step back. I've obviously dumped the court. And let's walk through this flow chart and then talk a little bit more about how variety works into our games. So you've got your initial strategy, in this case, the 1-2 punch. Come up with the goods. No, you just stay here in this rinse and repeat cycle. Come up with the goods. Yes. Can I adjust to what my opponent has done? Basically, can I adjust to the adjustment? Yes, I can. I'm going to stick with this initial strategy. And then when we get to no here, this kind of is where your opponent gets grooved a little bit. So you're using your strategy, but your opponent maybe anticipates it, maybe just gets grooved on the shots you're giving them. So that would be where you might throw in a little bit more variety, mix it up, in other words, so that your opponent doesn't get grooved. And that's the purpose of variety, really. You've got your set strategy, maybe strategy, game plan A, maybe if game plan A is not working, use game plan B. But in either case, the variety is there to prevent your opponent from getting grooved with your shots or anticipating your tendencies. In other words, the variety augments and allows you to better execute your strategy. Now, very important to understand that variety by itself is not a strategy, and I've sort of alluded to that with this last discussion here. A strategy is a series of repeatable steps, right? You do 1, which leads you to 2, 3, 4, and so on. And variety here would be, you do 1 and 2, and then maybe you jump to 4, skipping 3, or maybe you do something entirely different, and you would do that maybe 20% of the time. That would be variety, but variety is not a strategy. If I've got these letters and I just mix them all up, variety, I mean, that's not a strategy. Again, a strategy is a repeatable set of steps, and that's what you want to have when you play a match. That's what all the pros have when they play matches. And the variety is there to prevent their opponent from, getting locked in. I was doing the baseball analogy here with the pitch coming in. But the variety is there to prevent the batter, in this case, from knowing what pitch is going to come. That's the analogy I was trying to get at. So that's why a pitcher goes, fastball, fastball, change up, or something like that. It's that variety in there. prevents the batter from getting grooved on the fastball. So you want to use variety to prevent your opponent from getting grooved on your fastball, aka your strategy, whether it's the 1-2 punch or something else. So with that in mind, that wraps up this video. I hope you guys liked it. Please let me know if you do in the comments below. Please like this video. There's, I think, a button down there where you can just click like on YouTube. So I appreciate that and look forward to reading your comments, and I will see everybody soon.